This is the existing table for my boat, and I've taken it apart to clean that up. I started sanding the first board. You can see it does look pretty good. The sanders that I'm using are these two. I watched some videos and people are using rotary sanders, and I've always been taught that you have to sand with the grain. So a rotary sander doesn't make any sense to me, but the results were pretty nice. So I have a lot of work to do, prep to do before I even start assigning any kind of finish work to it. But you can see it's a nice table. It does come up like this, and then there's a clever little method on the bottom that there's a board comes across here. It pivots out, and then it holds this guy up. I can't reach it. And then it has the piano hinges here, and I've taken the piano hinge off of that one, and this board's turned out fairly good. Quite a bit more sanding to do on that. And this is the, well, I guess we would call this the before. So it is a slow process. You take the wood and you sand it, and you sand it, and you sand it. And of course you have to unassemble it or disassemble it, and then sand it, and keep sanding it. And I have a long way to go. Obviously there's no sponsorship here, but I do like the Ryobi or Ryobi, and I'm particularly fond of this guy, which is a relatively new purchase, because the sandpaper actually just fastens with Velcro type of fastening to the bottom, whereas this guy is a bit of a pain to assemble it and fasten it correctly, and it seems to come out a bit, but I like that guy. Anyway, just a quick progress shot to show that getting a few more pieces to start to get the varnish off. I still have a long way to go as far as sanding goes, but it's I think it is actually starting to look pretty good. Often it helps to have some sort of record of how the pieces are assembled, so that I can put them back the way they're supposed to be. So this is, in a previous video, I showed this little piece. I didn't show this little piece because I couldn't, but this rotates out to hold the leaf when it's in place, and then when it's supposed to be down, then this little piece slides back in. But I just wanted to do a quick video to show myself mostly what these pieces look like that I'm disassembling, so I know how to put it back together properly. There's a nice washer on both sides of this to help it rotate. So it looks like whoever, well, my friend Louis Norris, who has since passed, did this for me the last time, and it looks like he didn't take it apart. He just varnished on top of it. Well, I'll take it apart and get that varnish off of there. I'm getting close to finishing the sanding. You know, you sand, and then you sand, and then you sand, and then you sand some more. So I'm prepped for the next phase, which will be, I have some good materials here, the tack cloth on the left, and then I use the gloves to keep the oil from my hands off of the wood, and then of course the Interlux varnish and a Interlux thinner. So the first several coats that go on will be very, very, very thin. But before that happens, I have teak cleaner parts 1 and 2, which I think are pretty important too. And then I have a little brush there that I use to brush the sand, the wood off of the pieces rather than using my hand to wipe it off. I'm not claiming to be any kind of an expert. I'm just sharing how I approach this. And one of the secrets that I use that has worked for me is that it's not a rush. I take my time, do it right, and take my time again and go back and try to do it even better, so that over the course of several weeks of sanding, I should be ready to move on to the next phase, and I'm all set up with my pieces there in order to do that. It's the middle of September 2024 right now, and it's the end of the season for the boat anyway, so there's no great loss by not having this in the cockpit to set anything on, because probably not going to be up in the cockpit anyway now. My goal is possibly achievable, is to get the sanding completed before the middle of next week, where I'll go back out and spend a week or so on the boat and let the dust settle as much as possible here in my workshop. And then maybe in a couple weeks when I get back, I'll be ready to start actually varnishing, preparing for the varnishing. But I think I might not make my deadline. All right, so now the second coat of Semco teak cleaner has been put on. Did lighten it up a little bit. It got pretty dark on that first one, but on the second one, and the instructions say that it will lighten it up. Hope I didn't kill that ivy down there with the Semco. I don't suspect it would, but anyway, I can see a few spots where I missed some varnish, which is not good. So I'm gonna let this stuff dry and come back in a couple of weeks. I'm gonna be on the boat for a couple of weeks, but I'll come back home and it should be ready for varnish. All right, so the next phase is the tack cloths to wipe down all of the wood so that it has the least amount of little dust particles on it. Can't get rid of all of them, I'm sure. But yesterday I did the Semco parts 1 and parts 2, and that worked out pretty good. It's a little scary at first because it gets really dark, and then the places where the hinges go, the stainless steel hinges go, I didn't really do a lot of removal there, because there's a little lip there between there's two surfaces here, and I didn't really want to destroy the second surface. It's just a slight little lip there. You can't, it's on the top here. Let's see. A little bit at the top, and then down here at the bottom. That's where the hinge goes, but it fits in there. I didn't want to grind down the top part. So anyway, this is the next phase, is to tack down all of with the tack cloths, with a professional tack cloth there, and use that to pick up as much little particles that are on the boards as possible. But this is going to sit for a couple of weeks while I'm out on the East Coast on the boat. hopes that the dust will be settled more so than we have right now. And we got the little robot cleaning the floor. I'll use a carpet shampooer to clean this nice rubber floor that I have in my workshop. And then I'll get some more of the dust out, and a lot of the dust will settle hopefully over the next 2 weeks, and then on to the next phase. Okay, back in the saddle. My first coat is about 50% Interlux 333 brushing liquid and 50% Interlux Schoner varnish. And so it's a very light coat on these boards. They're still wet right now, and I will show that. They look pretty good for the first coat. They're still wet. They'll get better. And then I have the other pieces. First coat, again, just the varnish, 50-50, 50 thinning, 50% thinning oil, 50% varnish, or approximately. And that's the first base coat on the one side. Let it dry for a day. Put the other sides, pieces, get them varnished, and then let them dry for a day. And then I will go on to, I use steel wool, preferably bronze or brass, copper, whatever. That doesn't rust, although it doesn't matter here. When I was on the boat last week, some of those pieces do stay on the deck somewhere and they rust. So it's not a good idea to use anything but a non-rusting type of abrasive. I don't use sandpaper. I just scruff it up with steel wool. And like I said, I'm no expert. I'm just sharing how I do it. So this is the day after the first coat of varnish was put on. It was mostly thinner, 50% thinner, maybe a little bit more on these pieces of wood. And they look fairly nice, a little darker than they were originally. That might be because of the thinner, but when I looked at the video before, you could see little bubbles, some few spots, but they're gone now. And I use these disposable brushes. I use this one to put the varnish on, but then I used a littler one to go around the edges that didn't, now the brush didn't have any varnish on it, but I just put it, used it to go around the edges in the event that there was possibly some drip. Let's see if any of the varnish had dripped. So just along the edge, I just run it across the edge there with a fresh brush, just in case there's any dripping. You know, it should stop the drips from happening. With the amount of varnish that's there, which is 50%, shouldn't probably get any drips. Now I know in a previous video I said I was going to take these off, but I decided not to because what's happened is these screws weren't coming out, and so that's a good reason to just leave them in. It's not a big deal anyway. So this is the other boards. Now this is the actual tabletop that pivots up and has the lip on the end. Again, I didn't take the screws out here because when I was taking the screws out of here, one of them just stripped, and so I thought maybe it would be better not to disassemble this little lip here and just leave it there. I think it's okay. Okay, now this is the bottom portion of the wood, first time being stained with about 50%. I used the bronze wool, which really wasn't necessary here. But what happens is on the boat, as I've said many times, is that steel wool rusts. If you don't get it all off the deck, you got some rust. So this is wet. All I did was the top that's exposed now, and then I used that small little 1-inch brush to go around, and maybe if there's any sort of drips, to try to pick it up. And then these are the other pieces here. You can see it's still wet, but it should dry better looking. But this is just the first coat. The bronze wool did a really nice job of smoothing it out, and it provides sort of an abrasive, rough finish for future coats of varnish. So it's a good thing to do, but it's certainly less compact than steel wool is. So there's a lot of little pieces. So before I put this coat on, I had to do definitely had to do the tack rags to get any possible little bronze pieces that were left, to get them off. So I've mixed the varnish and the thinning or brushing liquid, about 25% thinning liquid and 75% varnish. So it's starting to look a little bit better. I do spend a lot of time with that bronze wool. I'm trying to get, everything nice and smooth. I am seeing some bubbles in here right now, but I think it'll maybe level out as it dries. If not, then I'll just use some more bronze wool. I'm definitely not gonna I'm gonna get some regular steel wool. The bronze wool doesn't last very long. It's, I don't know, maybe flimsy would be the word, but it's just it just kind of vanishes, I guess is the best word. So starting to build this up. I'll probably put 7 or 8, maybe 9 coats on it. So you can see I'm starting to get a nicer little finish. The first coat was 50-50 varnish to thinning liquid, and the second coat now is 25% thinning liquid and 75% varnish. So I've got a long way to go, but it's starting to look nicer anyway. This is definitely a lot of work. This is the first coat of 100% varnish on this side, and it looks good. It finishes, it dries differently. I was waiting the 24 hours, but they wait the 24 hours and then you start prepping, and then it's 26 or 27 hours before you're ready to put the next coat on, and then you got to wait 24 hours from that. So I took the old blue tape off and I went and bought some 1-inch tape, which is still too wide. So I had to cut all of that tape. It would have been nice if the blue tape had little lines on it indicating where 5/8 was, or 9/16 or 7/16. That would have been beneficial for me. I don't know how that works for most people just trying to protect an edge. And these are the other boards. First coat of full varnish, 100%, and then the steel wool scruffs it down quite a bit, and then I put some more coats on. I'm thinking, well, this is a long process. My buddy Louis Norris did this for me, took it home, brought it back all varnished. I think he charged me $200, and it was quite a gift. I didn't realize it at the time, but there's a tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into making this as good as I can. I don't claim to be a professional varnisher by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot of work. So, got a lot of brushes, not enough. I'm sure I'll have to do more, but I also take the good use of the yogurt containers, the glass containers, and as I took my pieces apart, I put them in separate containers, so hopefully as I go to put it back together, I'll have all of the pieces there that I can use for reassembly without, looking through every single one. Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? So I think that's a good method too. So I have one coat of all varnish, no thinner, and this is before I start to put the second coat on. I have it scruffed up with the steel wool to give the varnish, the newest coat of varnish, something to grab onto. I haven't put the what do we call that stuff? I'll have to go look at it. I forgot the name of it. Cat cloth. That's what happens when you get old. Sometimes you forget these things. So, just looking at it, it's dirty for sure right now. One of the advantages of doing one side at a time, of course, is that I get to scruff up the most current finish twice, because I do it once now, and then I'll do it again before I actually put another coat of varnish on it. All right, another coat of full varnish on one of the sides. It's starting to look better and better. After I scruff it, it does kind of lose a lot of the sheen. I hope it doesn't lose a lot of the actual varnish. I think I'm starting to get some coats on there. So now I'm in, I think around 2 o'clock. So tomorrow I won't be able to start till 2. That means I'll finish at 3 or 3:30, and then that'll put me in, I'm moving a couple hours every day away from the start time, adding an extra couple hours. These are the leaves that fold up or down, and there's another full coat of varnish on here. Seems like after all the work, it doesn't really make sense not to put several coats of varnish on here. Plus, due to the season, it's middle of October. All right, another coat of 100% varnish. Things are definitely looking really good in most cases. There's some spots where I'm not quite sure why this is happening, but it is, and I'll show it to you on the other boards. But I took one rail off for the leaf, and the other, this is one of them, and then the other one I left on because I had troubles with the screws. I'm not sure if it's showing up, but this is where I got some trouble right on the edge there. It's a little extra buildup of varnish. Now I take the steel wool and I smooth it down, but then I'm still getting some buildup at some spots on the edges, not all of them. But I gotta say, it certainly looks better than it did before, but that's not much of a comparison or anything to say. There's a tremendous amount of effort. I'm conflicted going back out on the boat for a couple of weeks next week, which means I could get maybe 5 or 6 coats of varnish on these boards, and I would be rushing to get it back up, and I don't see any reason to get it back up. So I will probably not make the next deadline to get this guy, this table reassembled and put back in the cockpit. And now another coat of 100% varnish. Definitely is sort of rewarding, really, to take a look at the progress that's being made here. And I just don't see any reason not to keep putting varnish on. You know, it's the end of the season. There's no rush to put it back. And so I'll just keep scruffing and trying to clean up any little globs that are there. Try to do the best that I can. Maybe someone who's looking at these might say, hey, you're doing this wrong or you're doing that wrong. I think there's a place on YouTube to do exactly that. And if any professionals out there see something wrong, I'd definitely appreciate a comment on what should be done. I know one thing that I'm not doing is filtering the varnish. I'm just applying it straight. I know they sell filters that might be a little bit better method, but it's definitely looking good to me.